What would you do if the person you trusted most harbored a secret so devastating it could destroy your very existence? This is the story of Sarah, a devoted wife whose life was taken in the name of an unthinkable act, a story of faith, love, and a betrayal beyond comprehension. In the quiet of an ordinary life, Sarah was the picture of devotion. A loving wife, a compassionate friend, a woman whose faith in her husband was unshakable. To the world, their marriage seemed perfect, a union built on trust and shared dreams. But behind closed doors, the truth was far from what it seemed. Her husband, David, carried a secret so profound it would shatter the very foundation of their lives. A truth Sarah never saw coming until it was too late. As we reflect on this real-life story, subscribe and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more daily stories that need to be heard. Hit that subscribe button. And let us hear from you in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Now let's continue. David, the man she trusted with her heart, held another loyalty, a devotion to something ancient, something Sarah couldn't understand. And when the time came, when his loyalty was tested, he made a choice that would change everything. This is the story of a life taken in the name of belief. A love betrayed in ways Sarah never imagined. What led to that fateful night? And how could the person she loved most become the one to take it all away? This is her story. Sarah was a devoted and loving wife, known throughout her small town for her unwavering faith and compassion. She spent her days caring for others, offering a helping hand to neighbors in need, and dreaming of a better future for herself and her husband, David. Despite their modest life and ongoing struggles with poverty, Sarah's optimism never wavered. David, on the surface, appeared to be the perfect husband, kind, supportive, and attentive to Sarah's needs. Their life together, while humble, seemed happy. But beneath his warm demeanor, David carried a heavy burden, a secret so profound it threatened to destroy everything they had built. Unbeknownst to Sarah, David had become entangled in an ancient pagan religion. His involvement was born out of desperation, a search for a way to escape their financial troubles and bring prosperity into their lives. Yet, this path required sacrifices, and David knew he could never share this part of himself with Sarah. Sarah's kindness and resilience shone through even in their darkest moments. She supported David tirelessly, believing in his goodness and their shared dreams for the future. She worked hard to make ends meet and never let their struggles dampen her hope. Her faith in David was unwavering, and she couldn't have imagined the depth of the secret he was keeping from her. The weight of their financial struggles began to take a toll on David. He grew restless, burdened by the constant pressure to provide for a life that always seemed out of reach. One fateful evening, he stumbled upon whispers of an ancient belief system that promised unimaginable prosperity, but at a cost. At first, David's involvement seemed harmless. He performed minor rituals, offering trinkets and small items as sacrifices, convincing himself that these acts were a necessary means to an end. But as the rituals failed to yield results, desperation consumed him. The promises of wealth and freedom dangled before him like a mirage, but the cost demanded by the faith grew darker, more sinister, with each passing day. David found himself spiraling deeper into the clutches of the ancient religion. The leaders of this belief system began to hint at the ultimate offering, a human life. The thought haunted David, but as their financial situation worsened, he grew increasingly convinced that this was the only way out. The devotion he once showed Sarah now became a mask to hide his growing obsession. I do hope you have subscribed already, as it is about to get really interesting. Unbeknownst to Sarah, David's decision had already been made. He had resolved to offer her as a sacrifice. The thought twisted his love into something unrecognizable, but his desperation clouded every shred of reason. Sarah began noticing subtle changes in David's behavior. He started leaving the house late at night, returning hours later with vague excuses. She found strange objects hidden in corners of their modest home, worn candles, faded symbols scrawled on scraps of paper, and bowls containing dark, unrecognizable substances. When she questioned him, David dismissed her concerns with forced smiles and empty reassurances. Yet, the distance between them grew. David, once warm and attentive, had become cold and withdrawn. Sarah's heart ached as she tried to bridge the widening gap, unaware of the storm gathering just beyond her reach. When Sarah disappeared without a trace, the small town was thrown into turmoil. Her absence was immediate and unsettling. Neighbors who had known her as a constant presence began to ask questions. Had she run away? Was she taken? The uncertainty grew, and soon whispers began circulating about the strange behavior of her husband, David. Sarah's family, alarmed by her sudden disappearance, reported it to the local authorities. The investigation began in earnest, and it wasn't long before the police started to suspect foul play. Initially, David cooperated, maintaining that he had no idea where Sarah had gone. But there was something off about his demeanor, his nervousness, his inconsistencies when recounting the last moments he had spent with her. As the investigation unfolded, the police found a series of ritualistic items hidden in the most unexpected places of their home. Behind a loose floorboard in the attic, they discovered an altar, carefully constructed with symbols and items that did not belong in a modest home. The altar was adorned with strange candles and old, weathered artifacts. But what truly sent a chill down their spines was the journal. The journal, belonging to David, detailed a series of rituals, practices, and the dark sacrifices required by the belief system he had fallen into. The last entries were chilling, explicit instructions for a ritual involving Sarah, promising wealth and freedom in exchange for her life. The handwriting was frantic, desperate, evidence of a man slowly losing his grip on reality. Witnesses began to come forward with eerie accounts. Several neighbors mentioned hearing strange noises late at night, chants, low murmurs, and the sound of footsteps pacing in the yard. One neighbor recalled seeing David standing by the window in the dead of night, his face obscured by the shadows, as though he were watching for something or someone. Another spoke of strange figures arriving at the house under the cover of darkness, their faces masked by the night. Despite David's initial denials, inconsistencies in his story began to stack up. He couldn't account for his whereabouts on the night Sarah vanished. He denied having anything to do with the altar or the journal, but the evidence mounted. With each new revelation, David's facade began to crack. The more the investigators dug, the more they realized that Sarah's disappearance wasn't a simple case of someone running away. It was something far darker, and David was the key suspect. The investigation reached a turning point when David, under the weight of mounting evidence, finally broke. He confessed to the unthinkable act, his role in Sarah's death. In a cold, emotionless voice, he admitted to sacrificing her to appease the dark gods, believing that this brutal act would finally bring the wealth and prosperity he so desperately sought. David explained that, over time, the ancient rituals had consumed him, filling his mind with twisted promises of power and riches. He spoke of his growing obsession, the voices he believed were guiding him, and the promise of unimaginable wealth in exchange for a life, his wife's life. Desperation had driven him to this point, but there was something more, a delusion that had overtaken his judgment. It wasn't just the financial strain that led him down this path, it was the belief that he was chosen, that this sacrifice would change his fate forever. Was it desperation? Delusion? Or pure malice? It was unclear, but the effect of his confession was undeniable. Sarah had been the price. The community's reaction was one of disbelief and horror. The townspeople, who had once admired David as a kind and caring husband, could not reconcile the man they thought they knew with the cold-blooded murderer standing before them. Sarah's family was devastated. They had trusted David, welcomed him into their lives, and now they were left to mourn the loss of a woman who had never known the full extent of her husband's hidden life. The shockwaves rippled through the town, and friends and neighbors who had once seen Sarah as a beacon of kindness now grappled with the dark secret that had been concealed behind closed doors. As the investigation continued, a chilling twist emerged, one that revealed Sarah was not the first victim. Further digging uncovered links to other disappearances in nearby towns, all eerily similar. Ritualistic items, hidden altars, and the same ancient belief system appeared again and again. It seemed David wasn't an isolated case. He was part of a larger network of individuals drawn into this horrific belief. The discovery of these other victims turned the case into something even more disturbing than anyone had imagined. Sarah's death was merely one chapter in a much darker story, one that would unravel the lives of many more innocent people. The trial that followed David's confession was nothing short of a public spectacle, drawing the eyes of the entire town. David's defense was an attempt to frame his actions as a result of mental instability, claiming he had been overtaken by delusions and had not fully understood the consequences of his actions. His defense attorneys argued that his desperation had clouded his judgment and that he was a victim of the ancient belief system he had become consumed by. They painted him as a man who had been led astray, someone who had been manipulated by the very darkness he sought to escape. The prosecution, however, presented a much harsher view. They focused on the coldness of David's actions, highlighting the meticulous planning of the ritual and his deliberate choice to sacrifice his wife. The evidence against him was overwhelming: his journal, the altar, the ritual items, and his own confession. The prosecution painted David as a man who, despite his claims of desperation, had made a calculated decision to murder his wife in cold blood, driven by greed and the pursuit of power. The jury deliberated for days, but the verdict was inevitable. David was found guilty of murder, and the sentence was swift. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a fate that would see him locked away for the rest of his days. There was no mercy for the man who had betrayed his wife in the most horrific way imaginable. David's downfall was complete. The very greed and desperation that had driven him to sacrifice Sarah had now destroyed his own life. He had lost everything: his freedom, his dignity, and the love of his wife. He had been a man of promises and dreams, but in the end, those dreams turned to ashes as he was consumed by the darkness he had embraced. The haunting nature of his betrayal lingered long after the trial. How could the man Sarah had trusted above all others, the one she had loved and supported through years of hardship, become her executioner? The horror of it all was something that never left the people who had known them. David's actions had destroyed not only Sarah, but also the very fabric of their shared life. Please, my lovely family, remember to subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you won't ever miss the next thrilling story coming up next. The case left a lasting scar on the community. People who had once seen David as a hardworking, devoted husband could hardly believe the truth. The town was forever changed, its sense of trust shattered. In the aftermath, debates raged about the dangers of secrecy and the lengths to which desperation could drive someone. For Sarah's family and friends, there would be no healing, only the haunting memory of a life stolen by the man who had promised to protect her. The town would never be the same. Sarah's life was one of kindness, love, and unwavering faith. She gave her all to those she cared about, her every action motivated by a hope for a better future. But her untimely death leaves behind a void, a tragedy that could have been avoided had the truth been known, had the secrets not remained buried. Sarah was more than just a victim of a brutal crime. She was a woman who deserved more than to have her life stolen by the person she trusted most. As we reflect on her story, we must ask ourselves, how well do we really know those closest to us? What drives someone to commit such a horrifying act? It's a chilling thought, how easily someone can hide a darker side beneath a facade of normalcy. We must also consider what desperation can do to the human soul, how it can warp a person's mind and make them believe that the unthinkable is the only solution. This story serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of hidden beliefs and unchecked desperation. No matter how well we think we know those around us, it's crucial to remain vigilant, to never ignore the warning signs, and to foster openness in our relationships. Secrets, when left unchecked, can lead to destruction. Sarah's life is a cautionary tale, one we should all carry with us as a reminder of the need for honesty, trust, and care in our most intimate connections. What do you think drove David to commit such an unthinkable act? Was it desperation, delusion, or something darker? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories that delve deep into the heart of betrayal and deception. And be sure to tune in next week, as we'll dive into the case of another shocking betrayal that rocked a community. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss it.